Hello, everyone. It is 1 p.m. Central, so we will get started. Thank you for tuning in to today's presentation, Tips and Tricks for Engaging Students in Early Childhood Education Content. My name is Kelsey, and I will be your moderator for today's presentation. First, here is your 30-second introduction to Realityworks for those of you who aren't familiar with us. We are an employee-owned company based in Eau Claire, Wisconsin that creates experiential learning tools for teaching job and life skills. We got our start over 20 years ago when former NASA engineer Rick Germain created the first RealCare baby infant simulator and then went on to found the company that is now Realityworks. Today, our training tools combine curriculum with hands-on learning tools, student activities, and assessments. Baby is still around, but now you can look to us for our tools like our bovine birthing and ultrasound, virtual welding simulator, wearable geriatric sensitivity suits, and if you have some time, we encourage you to check out our website and see it all. Co-presenting today, we have Denise Dubois, who is the Senior Family and Consumer Sciences Product Manager here at Realityworks and has been with us for over 15 years. She is the frequent presenter, trainer, and blogger for all things related to facts, health science, and human services. She has experience teaching in Wisconsin and Minnesota and has over 20 years of education marketing experience and professional development. She is also the co-chair for Alliance for Family and Consumer Sciences and on the Executive Council for the National Consortium for Health Science Education. Before we get started, I want to cover a couple things. First, today's presentation is being recorded, and all attendees will receive a link containing the recording, as well as a copy of the PowerPoint slides and free resources. For those of you attending live today, you will also receive a certificate of completion for attending today's presentation. Keep an eye on your email. You will receive that email within 24 hours after the presentation. We will have time at the end for Q&A, so feel free to type your questions in the chat or Q&A feature located at the bottom of your screen. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Denise.
Thank you very much, Kelsey, and welcome everyone to our session today. We're delighted to have Aubry Weigel with us today. She's FACS Department Chair and also Pathway Lead for the Wichita Public Schools. And later in our webinar, she's going to be sharing some very engaging and creative classroom ideas and activities. So here's a little bit about our session today. I'm going to just briefly introduce where early childhood education fits into the new career cluster model that has recently happened. Then we're going to go into Aubry's section where she's going to share all of her great tips and tricks with you. I'm going to then highlight approximately 5 different Realityworks products we think that really make early childhood education content come alive and are very engaging. And then we're going to wrap up with some more free resources and some Q&A. So let's take a look at that early childhood education pathway. Now, if you've been paying attention in current tech education in 2024, the career cluster model went through an update. And this is the new framework wheel view. There are 11 clusters and 3 what they call cross-cutting clusters that fit into all other clusters. Now we're going to take a look at just how early childhood education fits into this new model. In the new model, early childhood education fits within the education cluster. And within the cluster, there are 4 things called subclusters. Those used to be referred to as pathways. But when you take a closer look at the subcluster, there's an early childhood education pathway that it fits within early childhood development. And that's really what we're talking about. So when you dig even further at the Advanced CT website into that cluster and pathway, in the descriptions, it says here that, you can see how early childhood development subclusters are the one where early childhood ed really content falls within. The definition states it's careers dedicated to nurturing the holistic growth of children from birth to 8 years old through education, care, and early intervention. And that is the kind of content that we're hoping to share ideas with you today of how to bring those content areas and topics alive with activities and engaging resources. So Aubry, I'm going to turn it over to you and you can go ahead and begin your section. And if I'm not quite right on the slides the way you want, just say next slide.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming today. So I'm Aubry Weigel and I work at Wichita Public Schools, and this is my 12th year teaching, but I guess a little bit about my district. It's pretty large. It is the largest district that's in Kansas. We have 25 CTE pathways, over 8,000 employees, 112 different languages spoken. We have 7 comprehensive high schools and then 7 child development centers that are built inside our facilities at our high schools. You can go ahead and scoot on. All right, so a little bit about me. We have a total of 4 full-time family and consumer sciences teachers in my school. And so within that, all of us kind of have our own specialty or pathway that we focus on. And for me, I primarily focus on the early childhood program. My high school also has what's considered an early college. It's called the Early College Academy program. So some of our students, there's about 50 kids per class, that will eventually graduate with an associate's by the time that they graduate high school as well. So it's pretty neat, but it's a really good place to work, and we're the Northwest Grizzlies. So you can go on. So for the classes that I teach, this is technically usually the order that I like them to start in. So they start in our intro level class, which is career and life planning. And usually that's taken as a freshman. And then they would move into parenting, or parenting and child development, which is the same thing as human growth and development. And usually freshman or sophomore year, they'll take family studies. Hopefully sophomore year, they're signing up for orientation to early childhood development, which is a year-long course. And that's kind of like, I would say, a deep dive in child development and focused a lot more on being a child care provider and early childhood educator versus like the parenting side of things. And then lastly, hopefully their junior or senior year, they're signing up for foundations and lab, which is where they're with me one class period. We do certifications. We learn about lesson planning. We create professional portfolios. And then in that lab piece, they're housed in our early childhood center, where they get to basically intern for that class period. So like I said, I'm going to go through each of these classes. I'll kind of share some ideas. Towards the end of my presentation, you will see there will be a QR code that will have a link to my Google Drive that you have access to all this stuff. So prior to me teaching at Northwest High School, I taught at West High School. And when I taught there, I taught the career and life planning class, which is our introduction level, and it's used in many pathways. Technically, freshmen all the way through seniors can take it. And a lot of times in this class, it's more of like, I don't want to say career investigation, but it's very much learning about all things family and consumer sciences related and what are the different careers that are in that pathway. They can focus a lot on FCCLA STAR events and things like that in this class. Some assignments that I created that I used pretty readily in that class was first and foremost a Bell worksheet. For me, having structure, especially with freshmen and underclassmen, was really important. And so I always started off every day with a different question. And it, sometimes, well, actually most of the time they were related to different careers or whatever unit we were on. In this class, I also had my students do mock interviews. So I would invite our actual human resources people out and they would actually interview our students. So we would not only have them create resumes and work on cover letters, I would have them do what I would call centers. You might know them as stations, but that's one thing that I really like to do to help not only help students get up and move around, but also just break some of our larger topics into smaller, I guess, chunkable, easier to digest stations. So I have a center that's created that's called interview prep, and all of them require kiddos to do different things. For example, one of them at that center is to practice shaking somebody's hand. And then when they felt like they were really confident, they had to shake mine and I had to judge them on it, which was fun. Also, at the end of that class, one of the things that we focused on was just stress management. For freshmen, a lot of times just getting into what high school feels like, for them to understand what finals week is and the pressures that come along with that. I felt like it was really important for me to teach them how to manage that stress and give them, healthy outlets. So I had different things that they could do, and we just kind of practiced that throughout the room, which was also really fun. You can scoot on. Parenting is a class that I just started teaching here at Northwest when I came here 5 years ago. And this is very quickly become one of my favorite classes. So this is just a 1 semester class. And this is the class that we house the Real Care babies in. And I have all kinds of ideas. We just started our semester, and so I'm already getting back into some of the things, and I always try to revamp stuff. But I included some things that I felt like were my tried and true, and just things that I feel like I can use again and again, and students don't ever get sick of it. So the very first thing I have listed there is a fingerprint. And in fact, we just did that this week where I have my students, I just give them a printout of a fingerprint. I included it in the Google Drive. And basically what they do is they include information about themselves on this fingerprint. And it's basically whatever they feel comfortable sharing. I usually have them do this after I have introduced myself. So there's not quite as much pressure. And they kind of know a little bit about me. And that way they don't feel as nervous to share things. I give them ideas of things that they can include, and then I also provide them examples of what it might look like when it's finished. But this is a really good way for me to tie in our nature versus nurture introduction. So we talk a lot about, your environment. We also talk about genetically, what are things you inherited. And so we just kind of tie that into how everybody's different. We all have our own fingerprint. And then we kind of get into the fun stuff. Some other things that you'll see, I have that infant fabric or quiet books. It's the bottom right picture on the very bottom of that picture. And I'll explain why I have it so low here in a minute. But this is one of probably my more fun hands-on projects in this class, and my students always amaze me. Typically for this particular assignment, we are focused on helping children ages 1 to 3 develop fine motor skills. And so they are required to create a page that would belong in a quiet book that we focus. I let them choose a letter. So we make like an alphabet quiet book as a class. This class is typically, I have about 30 kids. So just so you know, it's usually a pretty large class. So you might have some kids who pick the same letter, but anyway, they choose a letter, they come up with a theme, they do a rough draft. I included the rough draft in the Google Drive as well. And then they create their final draft. I usually in this class, because I have so many, will just use construction paper and just random craft stuff that I have in my room. I purposefully put them on my wall low because my classroom is about 5 classrooms away from our early childhood center. And so when the weather gets bad, or if kiddos can't go outside, or if they just need to get in to the gym to move, they will walk through my hallway by my room and go down to the gym. And so one of the things that my students really love is that a lot of times the littles will walk by and they actually engage with their quiet book pages, which again is really fun for them to see just kind of what they made and then see that the little kids are interested in it. My next activity that I created, and again is in the Drive, is a nursery design. This one, there's lots of different websites you can use. One that I found that worked really, really well, that was super easy for students to use, is listed, I think, inside that assignment. If not, I think it's called Design with Friends, but super easy. And you just, this was always my wrap up over our infant unit. So I have my students think about all the different areas of development. So physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. And we go through and talk about all the different things that would go in a nursery and how they take safety into consideration, and how do the items that are in that design help with that child's development. And there's a reflection piece that goes with it as well. So they share not only their pre-thinking, they have a reflection they turn into me, as well as their design. So there's kind of 3 parts to it. The next one that's listed is that folder game. And a folder game is really just that. You all probably know these, especially if you teach early childhood. I have them. This is more focused on our 3-year-old unit. So we make different games that we feel like 3-year-olds could do that would benefit them in their intellectual development. That's usually where I fit that in that particular class. And then my last little bullet point there is the pregnancy unit. So I have went probably 4 of my 5 years trying to figure out what I liked best to teach the pregnancy unit. And I've tried a lot of different things, whether it be research projects or timelines and things like that. And honestly, what I found was that my students were not finding what I wanted them to find. And so what I did was I used, oh goodness, what's the website? I used babycenter.com. I use their information. They go week by week, and I created a presentation using that information and their little pictures of all the different things that all the different developmental things. And I included guided notes as well as choices for assignments that went with each trimester. I think there's an introduction to pregnancy, and then I also had the trimester 1, trimester 2, and trimester 3. And for each of those trimesters, there were different options for the students to choose between what they wanted to focus on. The next, let's see. Okay, so we're in my early childhood program. Once they take parenting and they take family studies, the hope is that they're getting into my early childhood program. A lot of questions that I get is like, how does it work? If it's inside your building, who staffs it? What does that look like? So in my district, we've had a partnership with our local YMCA for a very long time. And the way that it works is that our district provides the building, and then our YMCA staffs and they handle all like the enrollment and everything like that. So there's definitely a partnership that goes there. So the YMCA staffs it, and then our students will go in and then they intern in the daycare. And there's 3 different classrooms. I have an infant classroom, a toddler classroom, and a preschool classroom, which is, I think, definitely different for a lot of people who maybe just have the early childhood piece where it's maybe just a preschool room. The nice thing is that my students also get experience with infants as little as 6 weeks all the way up to 5-year-olds. The staff in there mentor students, and then I, based on just whatever hour I have them, I sometimes get to go in while they're interning, but the class that they're with me, which I'll talk about here shortly, we do group lesson plans. We also do individual lesson plans. So we all kind of flow back and forth to that classroom quite a bit. Technically, the students or the children that are inside our daycare, there's really 3 preferences. The first preference is that it's student children. So if we have students in our high school that have children, they would have first dibs on a spot. The second, I guess, way that you'd be able to get your kiddo in there is if you're a staff member, not necessarily just at our building, but like in our district. And then lastly, it would be community members' children. Typically, we mostly just have, I would probably say 98% of the children that are in there are staff members' children. We do have some students that have children in there, but very rarely do we have space for community just because it's pretty sought after. In family studies, which is another 1 semester class, this is still, I would probably say, a 9 to 12 age range. You can definitely do it if you want. Any of those age ranges. I do offer this one as college credit, and parenting is also offered as a college credit, but you have to be at least a sophomore or above to get it. So it kind of makes a difference on when you take it. But for this class, I have a final, which is the parenting handbook project. And I have that, I think, included where I just have students create a book based on different things that we focus on with parenting, because there's a whole parenting unit in there. There's also, I have a presentation that I created about different parenting styles. There's a guided note sheet that goes out with that as well. I created, you can kind of see an example here on the top right of this slide of a PSA. I had students create a PSA about unhealthy relationships. So there were certain things I was looking for. I believe that assignment sheet is also inside my Google Drive. And that one, like I said, specifically focused on unhealthy relationships. I had a worksheet that just lets students kind of start having a conversation about becoming a parent. What are the pros of specific ages? What are the cons of specific ages and things like that? And then lastly, this was a big hit when I presented this at Vision Conference. I do this, it's kind of like a sorting activity where I have a list of different, I guess you would say like different things that would happen. And then the students have to sort those little pieces of paper into what area of development that it goes into. And this I typically would do kind of in the middle of our parenting unit. Other things that I do in this class that aren't listed, This one is a lot more focused on relationships and communication, but it seems like we end up in that parenting section. So that's kind of how this class flows. So we kind of start with like how are families, I don't want to say created, but how are families structured? What's the function of families? Then we move into communication and healthy relationships, and then unhealthy relationships. And then we go into parenting styles and parenting. So that's kind of the flow of this class. But again, that pie sorting thing, that's really fun. And I just added an M there because I add moral in this class as far as moral development. My last two classes, well, I think orientation's not on. I think we'll get to there, but technically the last two classes that I want students to take are foundations and lab. And this one is only available for juniors or seniors to take, and they have to take them together at the same time. For this class, students have to go through a background check, and they have to fill out, they have to have their TB test completed in order to work with the children. Like I said, it's staffed through the YMCA, so we follow all it's a licensed daycare, so we follow all the procedures that Kansas State would require them to do. Inside the class with me, I have students create a portfolio. Every day that they go into the daycare, they fill out daily logs about what happened. So we focus on different kinds of observations. We also, in this class, we work on lesson plans. So we work not only just on templates, or like a template I've created for them. They eventually will get to the point where they can write their own. I did include, I believe, a project that's considered the traveling math backpack. And that's kind of in our math unit. I have them create a traveling backpack that could go home with our kiddos that are in the preschool classroom. I do kind of start off actually, no, this is kind of towards the end. One of the last things I have my students do is just do career research. So not just based on like, okay, I can be a lead teacher, but I want them to think beyond that classroom. What are the other opportunities in early childhood? Because there are so many. And then one of the things that we do in second semester is I have students research behavior strategies. One of my professional learning experiences that they complete is just focusing on managing behaviors and being able to explain to me like what behavior did they see and how did they, work together with staff to correct that behavior? How did they handle that situation? And so I have them research different strategies that are very common in young kiddos. And then with a partner, they have to determine, how do you handle that? And then we kind of do, I would say, like a gallery walk with it. So they all eventually get all of how you should handle specific behaviors. The pictures that I have there, I have my students create bulletin boards. So you can tell definitely that bottom left one was definitely student created, but they also had some input from our children in the daycare. So I always try to have them incorporate student work if possible inside their bulletin boards. You can see I do have some students there in the top left that are reading to our preschoolers in their circle time. And then, like I said, this is where I would have students write lessons and then actually do them and then reflect over it inside this class. And then I think this is the last class that I'm going to talk about. This one's my orientation class. And like I said, this one is a deep dive on child development. This is specifically meant for sophomores and up. And this is a year-long class. This class, I just started teaching last year. It was new for us. And it has quickly become one of my favorites. We just, like I said, we get to do a deep dive and we focus on children ages 0 all the way up to 12. So I have some ideas in there. There's a common illnesses center. One of our sections in our course requires us to focus on how to handle some of those common illnesses, as well as, first aid kits and things like that. And so I have some common illness centers where it gives some symptoms. They have to determine what it is and then how should they handle it. We have fine versus gross motor skills centers. You can kind of see in that top right picture, it looks like sequins and a letter. So I have my students practice different fine or gross motor skills. So for that particular one, I have students, some of the centers that I have set up are like balancing, cutting with their non-dominant hand, putting a puzzle together without having their eyes open. We do jump roping, hula hoops, the pincer grasp, they practice that. So there's lots of fun, different things that I've kind of put together for them just to practice what it feels like using your fine versus your gross motor skills. The timeline project, you can kind of see I have in that bottom left picture, there's a bunch of really big white pieces of paper hung up in the hallway, and that is specifically what those timelines look like. So I just have my students get into groups of 2 or 3, and then they work on creating a timeline of all the things that we covered from ages 0 to 1. I have students create a parent help newsletter, which I think that one is the parents are writing in, they have questions, and then they have to answer those questions and create a newsletter about it. Like I said, we do have that first aid kit project where I have students choose. So in our textbook, it goes over, the different things that you would want to include in it. But I also have them research, okay, what are the top 10 things that you think you need to have? And then they have to research what's the price of it. And then they actually create an actual little box, and then they print off the pictures and put it inside the box. We do sock puppets where we focus on puppetry and the importance of that and the benefits of puppetry. I have students write a children's book. And one of the things, I don't think I have this on my slide, but I do have a picture of it, is I just have a lot of times them use their own creativity, and based on wherever we are, unit-wise and age-wise, I'll say, okay, I want you to create a game that focuses on this particular goal for children, and it should be developmentally appropriate for this specific age. So that particular game, it's an apple tree game, and it focused primarily on fine motor skills, but you can see that the student also focused on colors. And so really the little pom-poms were, and this was all made of just like random things that were in my classroom. So it's a printer box, cardboard box lid, and the student covered it in construction paper, created trees out of felt. It was during the fall, so they wanted to use orange and yellow. And then I'm trying to think, it was a plastic cup that the student used to glue on the side of it to be our little barrel. And then the pom-poms were just pom-poms that I had. And so the student tried to match it up based on the color of the tree. So you can see in that bottom left picture, students are moving around the hallway. That's what they're doing. They're all playing each other's games. And then there's that Google Drive. It'll take you to not only my presentation from Vision, but it'll also take you to, there's a folder for each of the classes that I had broken down with all those resources in them. And my email too, if you have questions.
Aubry, thank you so much. What a rich bunch of new ideas that teachers can walk away with. There's just so much there. And thank you for being willing to share all of these resources. This is just tremendous. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
Really, really appreciate it. So what we are going to do next, we are going to share a few of the products that we have at Realityworks that we think are really well suited for engaging students in early childhood education content. And we've chosen some of our favorites, our top 5, but be aware there are many, many more than these, and you can go to our website to find those. But here are some of our top 5. And at first, we would be remiss if we didn't say Real Care Baby, because this was the genesis of the company, but really it is what we think of as the world's most sophisticated infant simulator. But as you're talking about infant development and infant health and safety issues and things like that, and even the parenting, this is our best tool. Nothing will bring home what it's like for the level of responsibility and to care for an infant than having you immersed and becoming the caregiver, overnight or over a weekend, 24/7, and really feeling what it's like to have to figure out what your infant needs when it's crying, how to comfort them, and things like that. So this is, again, one of our favorite products to help make those types of topics within ECE very, very engaging. One of our newest programs is the Child Care Experience, which is basically a pop-up childcare center in your room. And this provides your students with the ability to kind of walk in the shoes of what it's like to be an infant childcare worker, if that's a pathway they would like to explore for future work opportunities. And your students will have to care for up to 4 or even more infants simultaneously, figuring out what they need. and everything, of course, is being tracked, all the care. So you get all sorts of different reporting out the back end, but you are the child care provider. You are also creating that daily parent report. So you're logging all the care that you give to them. There are random events that happen because we know life is unpredictable. The infants are 3 months and 9 months of age. So you've got different needs at the different stages and ages. And there's just a whole lot there. But again, one of our very favorite top 5 products for engaging specifically in childcare careers. The Child Care Center Design Kit's kind of an oldie but a goodie. We've probably had this around maybe 8 to 10 years already, but this gets you into thinking about the environment of your childcare space and trying to put together and design the very best environment for each of the different ages. So you're tasked with having to lay out an infant room, a toddler room, and a preschool room in a childcare center. If you were a director, or even if you were a teacher in one of those rooms, what would that space look like and why? So you think, very thoughtfully and purposefully about where you would put the different furniture items and things around the room and why you would do that. So and there's ways to be able to do hands-on with the scaled tiles that represent the different things you'll see in the rooms. You can change your mind. You can change the size of the room and all sorts of things. So it's just, again, really engaging activity to make students think through the physical environment that they want to work within. We have something called the CDA scenario kit, and we know certifications are like the gold standards in pathways when you can align everything and get that certification at the end or that credential. And one of the primary ones nationally for ECE is that Child Development Associate certification. Now, even if you don't offer that specific certification, the scenario kit puts you into problem solving and critical thinking, many different scenarios in 13 different competency areas, working with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers. And by the time you get through with all of these scenarios, and there are 78 throughout the program, along with extension activities in the workbook, you will feel very prepared to deal with a wide variety of things you will run into in a childcare center. And then another favorite of ours is our Common Childhood Illness Baby. And this baby will give you practice in recognizing and then learning how to handle an infant that may come to you in a childcare center having chicken pox, hand, foot, mouth disease, pink eye, ear infection, diaper rash, fever, and then there's all sorts of hands-on things and ways to engage with this baby. And I love the fact that Aubry shared that one of her um, centers was common childhood illnesses, and this would be the perfect tool for a station like that. So now we'd like to share a few free resources before we go on to our Q&A session. And we love career exploration, and we have many different career exploration lessons for family and consumer science, and some that are specific to childcare career exploration. So if you go to the link that you see above, there are many, many different lessons to choose from. You could do one, you could do all of them. All of them are designed to give students exposure and research behind all sorts of different related careers in family and consumer science, and specifically early childhood education and childcare careers. We also have webinars each and every month, just like the one today. And there are a couple specific to early childhood education and childcare careers that we thought we would like to point out that are actually coming up in the future, and then will also be available as archived on our webinar site of our website. So that you see 2 of them listed here, which will be great ones for you to watch for. And then, of course, after the fact, if you'd like to watch them when it's convenient, those would be 2 that I would love to point out for you to watch for. And then we've also got a few other classroom scenario resources. We love scenario-based learning, and we have shared here 4 different scenarios that you can click on and use with your students immediately. Some of them are soft skills related to working in childcare careers. Some are infant health and safety scenarios. Some even go up to the preschool level. So there's 4 different ones here from 4 different card decks that we have available. And we thought that these would make some really fun icebreaker activities for you to do in your ECE classes. So I know that Kelsey's been watching our chat for some questions. Kelsey, I would throw it over to you at this point to see if there are any questions that have come up.
Perfect. Thanks, Denise. Yeah, just had a couple of questions roll in here. First question is, do the reality products that you reviewed, do they come with curriculum?
Yes, they all do. All of the, in fact, almost everything you can see on our website and in our catalogs do come with lesson plans, and the lessons in the curricula will actually integrate and use the resource and make it hopefully very easy and time saving for teachers to be able to use both the resource and also implementing and integrating the use of that into the lessons.
Perfect. And then another question here, what would be a good product to get started with if you're just starting an early childhood education pathway? What would be a good starter product?
Budget may drive some of that, and the focus that you want to start out with may also drive that. For example, if you're looking for just like an overview in some career exploration, we do have our education and training career exploration kit. But if you're looking for us to do like some hands-on type of thing, I think Real Care Baby is a great starting point. I also think that the Child Care Center Design Kit is a really fun, engaging, and great kickoff to thinking about things like environmental space and the needs of children birth through 5.
Perfect. All right. Well, at this time, I don't see any other questions.
Well, I would like to thank Aubry, first of all, for presenting all of those terrific classroom ideas and all the background information and sharing her Google Drive. I think if you're getting started or just trying to look for some new activities and things, she's just given you a wealth of things that you can tap into. So thank you, Aubry. And thank you, everybody, for spending the time with us today. We really appreciate it and hope that you'll take many of the ideas that Aubry shared and try them out with your own students.